We are technically live in the webinar. Attendees can join now.
Okay, folks, we are live. Attendees can join at this point. And I guess in another minute or so, Mr. Chairman can start the meeting.
Okay, it looks like we're live.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everybody. I'd like to call this May 11th, 2020 meeting of the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors to order. We'll start with an invocation followed by the pledge. Dear Lord, I pray that you guide us always, satisfy the needs that need to be met during this meeting. Strengthen us as we make tough decisions. Let us be effective and decisive. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll now do a roll call of the board for the benefit of those that can't see us. Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Day.
Here.
Ms. Ayers.
Here.
Mr. McDaniel.
Here.
And I am here also. This meeting will be held by electronic means pursuant to the continuity of governance ordinance adopted by the board on April 6, 2020. Due to the threats posed by COVID-19 pandemic to the health, safety, and welfare of the public, and in accordance with the recommendations, guidelines, and requirements of the federal, state, and local authorities. Board members will be participating remotely. Staff will be present as normal in the Board of Supervisors meeting room at 150 South Main Street, Lexington. And while the room will be open to the public, no more than 10 persons, including staff, will be allowed into the room at one time as per the board's COVID-19 meeting policy. We will hold a citizen comment near the beginning of the meeting. Also, there is a public hearing this evening. We'll do our best to take citizens' comment remotely. There are two options for citizens to offer comments remotely. One, they can join the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors Zoom webinar. The link is available on the county website to copy into the address line on your browser. Or two, they can join by telephone. Dial in one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, which is also available on the county website. At this time, we'll proceed with the meeting. Are there any changes to the agenda?
I have none.
Okay. We'll start with recognitions. Annually, the board recognizes the work and sacrifices of our dedicated emergency responders. Both National EMS Week and National Police Week occur in the month of May. Firefighters are recognized in the month of October. For us, we have proclamations recognizing our local EMS and law enforcement heroes. I would entertain a motion to adopt these proclamations.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Day.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Ms. Ayers.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Mr. Suter. Please prominently post these proclamations to the county website, provide to local media outlets, and provide copies to all our EMS and law enforcement agencies with the compliments and gratitudes of the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors.
Yes, sir.
It's now time for citizens' comments. I'll remind everybody that in addition to participating by Zoom or telephone, written citizen comments are solicited for receipt via U.S. mail and the drop box located at the front entrance of the county administration building. We will take comments in the following order. Comments received from citizens via email, letter, or drop box will be read aloud. Please be aware that the county has received numerous comments related to the Atlantic Coast Pipeline site plan review at the upcoming meeting of the Planning Commission. Although this item is not on the Board of Supervisors agenda, these comments have been provided to members of the Board of Supervisors as well. For in-person participants, if any, the moderator will ask if there are any participants present to comment. If they are, they will be invited to approach the podium and address the board. For Zoom participants, participants do not have to have a microphone on their computer, can click on the Q&A button and submit comments via typing. The moderator will read your comments aloud during the public comment. When typing a comment, please begin with your name and magisterial district. Participants with a microphone on their computer can click on raise hand button. The moderator will unmute participants one at a time to receive verbal comments. Citizens participating by phone will be allowed to speak. The moderator and board can only see your phone number on our screen. So the moderator will go down the list of numbers and unmute each line one at a time. Prior to unmuting a line, the moderator will announce the last three numbers of your phone number. You will then hear a recording indicating your phone is now unmuted. At that point, you can indicate whether or not you wish to comment. If stating yes, you'll be asked to state your name and magisterial district for the record. In any case, citizens' comments will follow the same rules as normal. Please state your name and magisterial district, and please limit comments to 3 minutes. At this time, I will open the citizen comment period. Please note the board is interested in hearing your comments, and the staff has done their best to make public comments possible during this challenging time. This period is to take comments unrelated to the 6 p.m. public hearing, at which we will take comments related to that matter. Mr. Suter, is anyone physically present to speak?
No, sir.
We'll now welcome comments from the public by electronic means. It's important to note that this is live recorded meetings and all comments will be taken under consideration by the board. Citizens participating by phone will also be allowed to speak. The moderator and board can only see your number on the screen. So at this point, you'll be able to indicate whether you want to speak or not. Mr. Spencer Suter will now start with electronics.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have no one to speak.
Okay. With no comments, the citizen comment period is now closed. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Are there any changes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Motion and a second. Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Motion, the minutes are approved. All right, we'll now move on to the county's appropriation resolution. Mr. Bolster.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. If you go to your board docs package, under the financial package item, you'll see there's a memorandum in there. And so I'll begin with the Commissioner of the Revenue. Got a handful of items that he wanted to communicate to the board. So the first is that he is finalizing the real estate tax book and is ready to incorporate any changes based on the tax rate. He's also continuing to receive 2019 state income tax return forms. And he's also reconciling the April 2020 DMV vehicle report with local records. And then he's also reconciling the Virginia Department of Game and Inland Fisheries boat report with local records as well. And lastly, he wanted to communicate that they continue to provide public service to Rockbridge County citizens via email, telephone, and mail. If there's no questions for Mr. David Weitzel, I'll move on to activities for the Treasurer's Office. Ms. Travato wanted to communicate that they continue to collect state income and estimated state taxes. She also wanted to let you all know that she mailed out the 2019 real estate supplemental tax bills. Those are due June 5th. The billing total on those is $34,717.34. I'll also communicate that she wanted to say that the debt set-off collections continue for the tax year 2019. She's anticipating that $38,914 associated with 249 filings will come into Rockbridge County this month. She also wanted to remind the public that there is an enhanced .NET Treasurer component to the BAI software that we use here locally. Folks can pay their tax bills online with either a debit or a credit card. There will be a convenience fee added to those transactions. This information is made available on the reverse side of our tax bills. She also wanted to mention that the building department has brought out a contractor to look at an estimate for installing some protective barriers between employees and customers at the counters down at both the Treasurer's Office and the Commissioner's Office. And lastly, she did receive the tax book from the Commissioner of the Revenues for personal property supplements for 16, 17, 18, and 19 tax years. With that, I'd like to transition to the line chart that's in your packet for revenues versus expenditures. I'd like to mostly focus. Stand by for a second. So the main focus here is, for me, is on the revenues and how they're being impacted by the COVID-19 virus. And so what I'd like to do is have Mr. Suter come in. I've got some notes here on sales tax, meals tax, occupancy, and county decals that I would like him to review.
Okay, let's see, we've known that April was when we'd see COVID-19 impact. The local 1% sales tax for April totaled $204,540. This is up $16,943 or 9% over last year. These revenue results from February, these are revenue results from February activities. May's receipts will reflect an initial impact from COVID-19 safety measures. At the moment, Mr. Bolster doesn't have an estimated shortfall for 2020. Meals tax receipts for the month of April are $96,661. This is down $29,085 or 23%, lower by 23% versus April last year. The year-to-date total was 1.236 million, lower by 28,405 or 2.5%. Receipts resulting from March transactions. May and June 2019 revenues totaled 138,866. and $149,062 respectively. A 23% reduction on these totals represents a $31,939 and $34,284 respectively. Available balance to collect is $273,826. The potential shortfall is $52,121. Occupancy taxes in April totaled $56,083. That's lower by $46,014 or 45.707% compared to April last year. The year-to-date occupancy revenues total $1,381,715. That's up $50,000 or 3.78% compared to last year. Revenue, let's see, revenue represents March collections by lodging properties. May and June 2019 revenues totaled $150,589 and $148,262 respectively. 45% reduction on these totals represents $70,000 and $66,720 respectively. Available balance to collect is $280,786. The potential FY shortfall is $113,665. County decals, the April revenues were $112,586. This is down $130,000 or 47, almost 48% compared to last year. And of course, that was expected. The year-to-date total is $299,902, and that's $210,000 lower than last year or last April. Again, down 58%. And again, that's the due date has been extended to June 15th. County revenues are up $845,505 versus the same time last year. Mr. Bolster did not drill down into the Lake Robertson revenues, but it remains closed, or the campground remains closed until we reopen it. Parks and Rec charges remain up $11,000, a little over $11,000 since last year, 2019 closed. Okay, the expenditures year to date. You good?
Sorry about that. Okay, so if there's no further questions on the line chart, you'll see that there's a request to appropriate funding into the contracted services line for the Commonwealth's attorney, some funding for CERT, and also the purchase of foam and the contribution to the Rockbridge County EDA. And so all of those have a fund source. So for the contracted services for the Commonwealth's attorney, that represents funding that they were able to go back to the COM board and get some additional funding. You may recall last month, there was an appropriation for $14,150. So they were able to go back and get an additional $5,175 from the COM board. The CERT team, they got a $1,000 grant from Washington and Lee University's grant committee. And so that funding was received last month. And also for hazmat, there was an incident earlier this year, and we got the payment of $7,050 to replenish the purchase of foam. And then the EDA's linked to the Community Foundation for Rockbridge, Bath, and Allegheny COVID-19 Relief Fund grant. And so that money has been sitting in a restricted cash account. And so we do have a source of funding for that. So with that, there's 405 invoices on the bills list, totaling $996,266.79. I just wanted to make note that that number is actually down compared to last year. It's down about $332,466. So with that, I have some notes on the bills list if there's any questions. Otherwise, my recommendation is to approve the appropriation resolution.
Are there any questions? Can we have a motion to approve, please?
Oh, so moved.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel,
Whoops.
Yes, sorry about that.
Mr. Day.
Yes.
Chair votes yes. We have a resolution supporting the Natural Bridge State Park dark sky application. Mr. Peters?
Yes, Natural Bridge State Park Manager Jim Jones is applying for Silver Tier Dark Sky Park recognition by the International Dark Sky Association, and he's asked the board to consider a resolution of support. The resolution in your package is in alignment with the county's land development regulations, LDRs, and comprehensive plan. And I advised Mr. Jones that I would bring this to the board for your consideration.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
And a second. All right, Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and the chair votes yes.
Thank you. I'll provide that to Mr. Jones.
All right, review of the VDOT 6-year plan.
Yes, as you are aware, the VDOT 6-year highway improvement plan is reviewed, advertised for public hearing and approved by the board annually before June 30 each year. Typically, the plan is reviewed and amended as requested by the board and advertised for the next regularly scheduled meeting. The public hearing is conducted jointly by the board and VDOT, and that's to satisfy both of our requirements with one public hearing. This year, due to the uncertainty of state revenues, VDOT has not yet provided local residencies with guidance on holding public hearings. As such, Residency Administrator Susan Hammond does not yet have authorization to hold a public hearing. However, she and I agreed that it would be best to go ahead and provide you, the board, with an overview of the document so that you may have some time to consider and make any requested amendments and not leave it to last minute. She's also alerted me to the fact that based on the escalation in stone cost, budget estimates for the near-term project are low, and it's probably going to leave no surplus funding in the FY21 6-year plan budget. Thus, the only realistic way to add a road to the plan would be to remove one that's already on the list. Ms. Hammond is present this evening physically to review the 6-year plan. Again, no action is requested at this time, but I will turn it over to her to review it with you and answer any questions that you might have. And if you'll indulge me, I'm going to try to share my screen here. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, very good. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll start off with a quick explanation on that sheet that you've got on the screen there. We have two revenue sources that fund your secondary 6-year plan program. The first one is the telephone that you see in the third line that has a pretty steady revenue stream of about $71,919 throughout each fiscal year. That is money that is collected from telecommunication fees for utilities that are installed within the right-of-way, and the code requires that those funds be redistributed back out to the locality where they're collected. So that's why that is anticipated to be a pretty consistent stream throughout. And on the very last line, you see the district unpaved grant program, and that is a funding stream that is used based on the calculation of unpaved roads and population within the county. And that fluctuates a little bit just depending on what the anticipated revenues are and what we expect to see over the next 6 years. As Mr. Suter said, there are some anticipated reductions in the revenue stream that we expect to hit next year. And we're looking at those things multiple times throughout the week, throughout each week, and trying to make sure that we're moving forward with you all with the best information that we can give you, which is the reason why we're holding off on doing the public hearing like normally do. Normally we have everything approved and completed before usually the middle part of June. And so the secretary's office clears up, say that we have enough information to move forward, then at least we can share the information that we have up to this point. So you can see that the cumulative amount of money that's in your secondary 6-year program is a little over 2.5 million. It's over the 6-year time frame, and we'll get started with the list of projects that you all have. Bear with me, I'm new at this process too. All right, this is a quick description on how to interpret the plan. The top line across gives you a breakdown of what you see underneath. The route number is the first line that you'll see in each box. The PPMS ID is a project identification number that we use. Accomplishment is the type of contract that we anticipate to use. The type of funds is state transportation program. Type of project helps to describe the amount of work that's going to be done. And then the priority is where it's listed in your plan. And then each category to the right of that, you've got your road name, the project number, a description, the from and to, and the length of the road. And then we have a breakdown of the overall cost, which start off with the preliminary engineering, the right-of-way costs, construction costs, and then the overall cost of the project. And then immediately under that is the expected advertisement date. The next column shows you any previous funding that's been accumulated on the project. Those are actual dollars. That's sort of money in the bank for your project. The next column shows the additional funding that's required, and that's the remaining portion that's need to be accumulated for the project. And then the remaining individual fiscal years that you see are where those allocations are shown to come in, which hopefully meets our advertisement date as well. So we'll get started with the first project, and the first one is the Route 606 Rafine Road project, which is actually a ramp project. And I'm very glad to say that you all made the decision to transfer some of your federal dollars several years ago. And this is a smart scale project. But we have also been able to add to this project, and they're going to, when this gets advertised next year, there will be some additional lengthening of the on-ramps at exit 205. So it's going to be in combination with what's on this project already. And there's just a portion of this that you all put forward with your secondary program, and the remaining portion of it is funded through Smart Scale and through our Interstate 81 funding. And that is on schedule for advertisement of April of next year. The next project is where we get into your secondary projects. All right. Moving down farther.
There's in here somewhere.
Stuck. Okay, thank you.
Just moving away.
Next project is Rocky Hollow Road. It's Route 711. This is actually completed already. It still shows up in your plan because there's a period of time in which we do our financial closures, but this project is complete. So depending on where things lie when we do the public hearing, that line item may go away. But when we pulled your plan, this this time it still shows up because the financial closures have not been complete. The next project is Gilmore Lane. This is Route 700. It's a rural rustic project for half a mile between 699 and the end of state maintenance. This one is under construction now. All of the pipes have been replaced and the road has been graded out, but we're still going to have to come back and shoot the surface on it. The next project is Old Chapel Road, Route 717. This is again a rural rustic project. It is from the intersection of Route 716 to the intersection of 712 for a distance of 1.9 miles. It is under construction as well. The pipes are being installed now. So hopefully before the end of this year, that one will be completed. The next project is Alum Springs Road, Route 633. That's a rural rustic project. It goes from the 1.3 miles west of the intersection of Route 780 to the intersection of 780 for a distance of 1.3 miles. That one is under construction too. The pipes have been installed, but it just needs to have the surface shot. Minimize that.
And you've muted all
No,
participants.
it's unmuted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, does he have to do it?
Yeah. It got all of, yeah, we're working on getting back. If you can log back in. And I'll call Jay and get him logged back in. Looks like you got Leslie too. If you can take care of him, he'll be back.
So yeah, we are still live. We can still stream them all live to YouTube. So just we had some power outage that knocked down our connection. So we're just trying to get everyone back. Okay. All right. Back and connected to the meeting. All right.
Didn't know you were that powerful, Susan.
I can't take credit for that one.
You guys can blame me. Yeah. She's probably on the meeting. Yeah.
Mr. Lewis, you back?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Day, you good?
Yes, sir.
Lewis, back? Sir. Mr. Day, good?
Yes, I'm good.
And this is David, so David and
Yes.
there's David. I'm gonna put you on. And I believe we're gonna need to restart that screen share.
Folks, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, as you all know, we had a power surge here, and that also hit at Supervisor Ayers' office, or at her house. So we're trying to get her logged back in now. So if you just bear with us for just a second.
She lost power from her internet connection.
Did you get the YouTube started?
It was kept rolling. Still. Make it big again. Expand the window for your meeting. Right, almost there. Just up a little bit. And then you go back to the share screen.
It's probably because you don't have your audio enabled. Okay, he's moving you to a panel.
She's just used.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, again, folks, again, apologize for that for anybody from the public and also the board. We got a power surge here. It took out our internet and took out our power for just a second. But we are back up and running now. There's been no delay or no, I think the live stream has worked through this entire thing. Chairman Lyons, because we had a pause in the meeting, if you could do another roll call just for the record.
Certainly. Supervisor Lewis,
Here.
Supervisor Day,
Here.
Supervisor Ayers,
Here.
and Supervisor McDaniel.
Here.
All right, we're all here. So we'll continue, Ms. Salmon. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. So our project where we left off was Waterloo Drive, Route 629. It's a real rustic project. It is from 2.12 miles from Route 850 to 1.69 miles from our Route 850 is 0.4 of a mile. That one we just started construction on. I will try to scroll through without doing any damage here. Yep, so far. Oh gosh, it wants to scroll through each block. There we go. Yeah, I got that tiny little spot underneath them. Okay. Oops, I might have gone too far. Okay. The next project is Anderson Farm Road, Route 712. It is from the intersection of 729 to the intersection of 602 for a distance of 1.3 miles. It's a rural rustic project. And that one, we haven't started any construction on the ground, but all the materials have been ordered for that project. So I expect when they're delivered, we'll be starting on that one soon. The next project is Bird Forest Road, Route 644. This is from the intersection of Route 672 to a dead end. It's 1.6 miles. That will be fully funded in this fiscal year, this upcoming fiscal year. The next project is Route 661, which is from the intersection of Route 662 to the end of state maintenance. That's 1.3 miles. That requires 2 additional years to fund the project. The next project is Eastfield Road, Route 731, which is from the intersection, from the intersection, the southern intersection of Route 602 to 1.2 miles north of that intersection for a distance of 1.2 miles. That is, again, a rural rustic project that will require 2 years to complete its funding. And just for context, our stone prices went up approximately, well, on average, about 25 to 30% higher than what we were paying. In some cases, it's closer to 40%. And so we had to go through and adjust the estimates for each of these projects. And with that increase, for the estimates, that changed the duration that we anticipated for funding the projects. And the plan that you're seeing now doesn't include any new projects for that very reason. I think I have a couple of them that you all had requested in previous last year to be looked at, and we just weren't in a financial position to add them. The next project is Route 674. This is 0.44 miles north of the intersection of Route 687 to 0.22 miles south of the intersection of 670. It's a distance of 1.2 miles. This also is a rural rustic project and will receive its funding fiscal year 2023. The next project is Route 701. Goodness. Bear with me, let me get the screen to the right page. That is 0.1 miles north of Route 671 to 0.15 miles south of Route 11 for a distance of 0.8 of a mile. And the funding for this project will be in fiscal year 23. The next project is Route 601. This is from the 0.6 miles north of the intersection of Route 615 to 0.1 miles north of the intersection of Route 614 for a distance of 1.8 miles. And it receives its final funding in fiscal year 2024. The next project is Route 659. This is from the north intersection of Route 644 to the south intersection of Route 644 for a distance of 0.3 miles. And this will still be requiring additional fund. No, I've got a typo. It looks like it'll get the last amount of funding that it needs in fiscal year 2020. The next project is Hollow Rock Road. Route 644. This is from the intersection of Route 631 to the end of state maintenance for 0.8 miles. And let's see, it will receive its money, final funding in fiscal year 2026. The next project is Route 57, and this is from, we had a termini that didn't show up in there. It goes to the interstate maintenance for a distance of 0.3 miles. I'll have that corrected before we go to the public hearing. And it receives its total funding in fiscal year 2026. The next project is Route 673, which is from the intersection of 672 to the intersection of 641 for a distance of 0.9 miles. And it receives all of its funding in fiscal year 2026 as well. And then the remaining projects that you see listed, they are countywide cost centers. These aren't project specific because it allows us to pursue some issues that might come up countywide that if we need some traffic control or we need signing or engineering to scope out another project, we have a small balance in there to be able to do that. And that's the last of those projects. We have there's another attachment that you all got with your package that shows the budget. And basically it's the same information that I went over with you, except that it shows whether or not the funding source came from either the telefees or from the unpaid district grant. I can go over that with you if you like. Normally, there's enough information in the first setup that that usually answers any questions, but I'll certainly do whichever the board prefers.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do have a question, Ms. Hammond. That doesn't relate to this necessarily, but while I always enjoy learning new things, but or is there, does VDOT have any role in the kids that play signs or areas that, you know, folks want to identify as a be careful zone kind of thing?
There was a part of what you said that was snipped out of there, but were you saying children at play?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It's probably been about 3 years ago that the policy is actually part of the code that changed and how that's handled. And basically, now requests are given to the county, and then we work with the county as far as making sure that where the request for the sign is at a good location and making sure that we can cover as much ground as possible. And then we keep a running list of those approved locations. But I think the code section says that it's not to have transportation, state transportation funds expended on it, but we do still try to help facilitate the best location.
All right, that's coming back to me. Yeah, I think we worked on another location a couple of years ago. All right.
Can I ask a question related to that. I had a request about a blind driveway. Is that, are those signs that we would use if we truly do have a blind entrance in and out of, you know, do we do that sort of thing?
We don't put those up for a couple of reasons. For one thing, when someone gets an entrance permit, whether it's private or for a commercial entrance, if they're within the county and outside the jurisdiction of a city that maintains its own streets, they come through our office, and what we do is try to facilitate the best location possible. If it's a commercial entrance, they're required to meet a minimum sight distance based on what the speed limit is. And if it's a private entrance, realizing that somebody they may not have the road frontage to be able to accommodate the ideal location, but we do try to get them to put their entrance in at a location that has the best sight distance that's available to them. And we haven't found, and which is part of the reason why we don't do this now, that's a terribly effective sign. We do try to work with the property owner if there are some recommendations that we can make. If it's a private property owner, try to work with them and maybe give them some options for things that they may be able to do to improve the sight distance at that location.
But if the driveway is already in, what do we do in situations where it truly is creating a problem and a hazard?
Is there a specific location that you'd like for us to take a look at?
Yes. Should I just contact you? Why don't I just contact you tomorrow? Or you want me to do that?
That's fine.
Okay. Sure. It was somebody calling on Lone Jack Road, having issues with their driveway there. So yes, I would like to talk to you about that.
Sure.
But we can do that some other time.
Okay.
And Ms. Hammond, I have a question for you.
Yes.
As we're repairing roads or repaving, resurfacing roads, do we ever widen them any? As vehicles are getting larger and traffic and all, it seems like some of the rural roads around the county are awful narrow. Is any of that ever done with the work that's done on the roads?
Normally, our paving program is considered a maintenance program, which is maintaining the existing surface. When we had more funding sources in your 6-year plan, we actually had an opportunity to do some operational improvements. You might be able to get some additional right-of-way and widen the roadway, maybe even correct some curves. We had more of an opportunity because you had a lot more funds that were coming into your program. But if it's actually widening the roadway, normally that would fall under a construction project. And the way that that's handled now is similarly to the very first project that you all have in your plan, which is a smart scale application. What you receive funding for in this particular program covers some unpaved roads, but a lot of what we're trying to do is on such a limited budget that your construction projects either have to go through smart scale, and with your maintenance paving, we're doing well to address the surface that's there. I hope that answers your question.
It does. It all comes back to funding, but
I would agree with you, though, that vehicles are getting wider, and what gets transported into rural areas is vastly different than what it was 30 years ago.
Yes, ma'am. The only other, and I would assume that is the same with dealing with shoulders on the roads. There are several where there's a shallow ditch or brush right up to the edge of right up to the stripe on the road. So I'm assuming that would be the same thing.
Well,
out there.
Essentially, not all of the roads in the county have the same right of way, and working within the right of way that we have can be a challenge, especially when you're in a mountainous area and where the edge of the pavement and the shoulder and the ditch line and then the toe of the back slope tie in is a relatively confined area. So on primary routes, we generally have, which is like Route 11, 39, 42, 252, 251. Those routes have an actual right-of-way with a footprint that we can, for shoulders and drainage, that we can accommodate a little bit better shoulders. But when you get into a lot of our secondary routes, particularly anything that's a gravel route, we're working with a right-of-way, a prescriptive right-of-way that basically gives us 30 feet, where you're dealing with 15 feet from the center line on either side of the road. And by the time you measure that off, that doesn't leave you a lot of room to be able to work within the right-of-way that we have.
Understood. And my last question, it deals with signage. Salines Mountain Road, from, I guess, where it intersects with Route 11 to where it enters Glasgow. Several times a year, there's tractor trailers that try to come across that because GPS says it's the shortest distance to enter Mohawk. And they end up getting stuck at various locations. Is there a way for signage to go up to limit those trucks, or is it a way that we can address the GPS issues that, you know, trucks shouldn't be on that road?
I'll answer your question in two parts. First of all, the GPS issue is very, very big for us. Routinely, we have drivers that are looking for the shortest route, and the shortest route is not necessarily the best route, or it might be the shortest in distance, but it's certainly not when you're dealing with roadway curvatures and the length and space that a large vehicle takes up to try to navigate those turns. We do have some signing up, I believe, on both ends, and I've also worked with Glasgow to try to provide some additional signing as you're coming from on 130 from 501. I know we have a sign at the intersection of 11 as well, where it's not recommended. If we actually go through and put a restriction on there, that would require action from the board. And part of how that process works is that you have to be able to provide an appropriate alternative route, which I think we probably could do. That doesn't create an undue hardship for anybody traveling that way. The one thing that the through truck restriction does not do is that if there is someone that's actually getting a delivery from a vehicle, that's still a legal way to get to any destination that's on that route, as long as they're not passing completely through. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But I know we try to do, especially on any of these routes where we may have a change in traffic or trucks that want to go that way, we try to do not recommended for vehicles, or if there's a link that's not recommended, we try to do that first before we formally put a restriction on it, because at that point you've committed to that direction. But if we're at that stage where that needs to be considered, then it would require a resolution from the board.
Okay,
and I
thank you.
help assist in that process as well.
Any more questions? Okay, hearing none, no actions requested, so we'll await VDOT's decision on scheduling a public hearing. And once again, thank you, Ms. Hammond, for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
All right, at this time, we'll move ahead to our scheduled public hearing. We're running a little behind. Spencer?
Yes, thank you all for your patience. With regard to this, I'd first like to thank Steve Bolster and the Finance Committee and the board for enduring many meetings as we work through this. This is the most difficult budget, obviously, I've ever worked with. This is the 8th public meeting, and there were, myriad additional behind-the-scenes meetings as we worked with department heads and different agencies to try to develop the budget and then trim the budget. When we started the process, the budget was already presenting significant challenges with a gap between anticipated revenues and requested expenditures of over 3.1 million. Then in March, when COVID-19 pandemic changed all our worlds, it changed the budget as well. Since then, we have collectively been able to trim budgets while simultaneously reducing anticipated revenues for FY21. The advertised budget includes a one cent increase in the real estate tax and a 25-cent increase in the personal property tax and use of more than 400,000 in reserves. And we still don't know the impact on the current year budget. To date, staff has only received one comment via telephone, which Mr. Bolster transposed and emailed to you, and I'll share that during the public hearing. While we've made intensive cuts, I do feel it prudent to share that this is going to be a long-term challenge. We won't know the full impact of revenue loss until later in FY21, and I can foresee significant challenges in the FY22 budget as well. Few notes here, just so you're aware, the public hearing notice was advertised in the News Gazette on April 29th and May 6th, and the Rockbridge Advocate in the May 2020 publication. There have been we continue to receive a few budget updates from regional agencies. A lot of these as the result of the COVID-19 pandemic and adjustments being made. For RALRO, I'll just share a couple here. RALRO, the county's cost share is now down from $233,728 to $209,607, a reduction of $24,000. And so that's a move in the right direction. The one that's a challenge is the PSA Lexington to Rafine debt service. We budgeted $250,000 based on recent actuals, and the official request is $364 now, $364,617, and so that's $114,617 more than we have in the budget. And again, this is a result of revenue losses that they have anticipated. This has been that debt service payment has been on a downward trend for years, which is why we budgeted for it. We usually budget very conservatively, but and it may not end up being this, but the recommendation from the Finance Committee is to address the anticipated shortfall with an appropriation toward the end of FY21 based on the actual support requested. In other words, we'll know towards the end of next fiscal year what it'll be. It may not be that much. It could be more, but it may not be as much. Previous requests, again, are historically conservative, and actuals are less than budgeted. The presented budget updates to include the public notice were put on the county's website as well. And at this time, unless you have questions, I'd recommend starting a public hearing or discussion.
Do we have any comments from Steve before we do that?
No, I've provided Steve's comments.
Okay. All right, we'll now open the public hearing following the same procedure as citizen comment period. We will take comments in the following order. Comments received by U.S. mail, email, or Dropbox. Do we have any of those, Mr. Suter?
We do. Find it here. As I noted, we received one comment via phone call. That was from Kathleen Ball of the Carrs Creek District. I forwarded that to the board via email. She's asking the county to fully fund the Talking Books for FY 2021 funding request, and that request was $6,435. She is a patron of Talking Books and benefits from the services they provide. The draft budget reflects funding at $5,792, a difference of $643, which is a 10% reduction, which is what the board determined to do with all nonprofits.
Okay, now we'll take in-person, Zoom, and phone. Just want to remind all citizens who wish to comment to begin with your name, magisterial district, and to please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we don't have anybody to comment.
Okay, with no further comments, then the public hearing is now closed.
So the, obviously there can be discussion, obviously, but the request is to set the budget adoption meeting for May 18th at 6 p.m.
Okay, you've heard the request. Is there any discussion? Can I have a motion to set the budget adoption meeting for May the 18th at 6
So
p.m.?
move.
We have a second.
Second?
Any discussion? Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you all. We'll now set a public hearing on the vacation of streets and alleys for the Buena Vista Dog Park. Mr. Suter?
Yes, we have a request from the city of Buena Vista to zone some of the land in the county, some of their land in the county from residential R1 to conservation district C1 for a dog park per section 60102-3 of the regulations. Parks are permitted in a C1, and this designation would allow for additional park type uses in the future. Under the R1 designation, a park would be a use by special exception. The property is located directly across the 10th Street Bridge from Glenmary Park entrance and is 100% in the floodplain. The property was platted during the late 1800s, and as with other properties in the area, is laced with old paper streets and alleys. Before we can consider rezoning this property for the city's intended use, the paper streets and alleys need to be vacated, and a plat by Green Forest Surveys is included in your package. And the request is to schedule a public hearing for May 26th to consider vacation of those streets and alleys.
Any questions for Mr. Suter? Is there a motion to schedule the public hearing?
So moved.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
And a second. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
It appears that his connection just fell off.
okay, and the chair will vote yes. So we will announce one, and if he comes back on. A consideration of proposals for county courthouse elevator maintenance. Mr. Bolster?
All right, Mr. Chairman, if you go to your board docs package, you'll see that staff had issued an RFP on the 25th of March, and it was for the courthouse elevator maintenance services. The RFP was posted to the county and EVO websites from the 25th of March to April 17th. There is a hyperlink in the board report where folks can access that information. In addition, it was published in the News Gazette on April 1st. I'm reporting to the board that there were 4 companies, firms that submitted proposals by 2 p.m. on April 17th in accordance with the RFP. We did videotape the opening of the proposals, and there is a hyperlink also in the board report to access that video. I will mention that the video, we had some technical difficulties, so it's a pretty large file. It's 1.1 gigabytes. So it'll take several minutes before that file opens up for viewing. The evaluation committee, they independently ranked the proposals that were received. And as part of the evaluation process, they did an average And what you have is the ranking in the board report. So you've got Otis ranked first at 99.33. ThyssenKrupp is second at 88.67. Tony is third at 87.33. And then Oracle is fourth at 83. So with that, we are presenting the board report to the Board of Supervisors. If they are in agreement with the evaluation team's ranking, we're asking them to accept that ranking. And we're also asking that the board authorize the county administrator to enter into negotiations on behalf of the board based on the final approved ranking of the received proposals and to return with a contract which is advantageous to the county. And I will add just one last thing. It's in the RFP. It's section 10, paragraph B. Negotiations will be conducted beginning with the proposer ranked first. If a contract cannot be reached, negotiations will be conducted with the proposer ranked second, and so on until a contract can be negotiated at a fair and a reasonable price. So I'm available for any questions if there are any.
Any questions concerning the courthouse elevator maintenance service agreement? Welcome back, Mr. McDaniel. If there's no questions, can we have a motion to accept the rankings and direct the county administrator to return to the board with a contract for consideration?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
yes,
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
and the chair votes yes. Now, consideration for the proposal rankings for the courthouse HVAC maintenance service RFP, Mr. Bolster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so this RFP was on a similar track as the one that was just discussed. On March 27th, staff issued an RFP for the HVAC maintenance services at the courthouse. It was again posted on the county and EVA websites from the 27th to April 20th. It should be noted that on April 16th, the staff did issue addendum number 1, and the primary changes were to update to correctly identify and update the name of the HVAC system monitoring program that was installed back in December of 2019. So there is a hyperlink in the board report to access the addendum. Again, as I mentioned previously, the proposal opening was videotaped. That link is posted to the county website. It was also advertised in the News Gazette on April 1st. The evaluation team individually ranked the received proposals, of which there were 3. They came back with an average score for each one. And what they're presenting to the board is Riddleberger ranked first at 97.67. Train was second at 96. And then Southern Air was third at 93.33. And so again, staff is bringing this ranking recommendation to the board, asking them to accept the ranking and to authorize the county administrator to enter into negotiations with the top ranked firm and to come back with a contract that is advantageous to the county at a future board meeting. And it also had similar language, same section, same paragraph about starting with the first ranked firm. If we cannot enter into a contract that is what we consider fair and reasonable, we'll move on to the second and so forth until we garner a contract. Again, staff is here to answer any kind of questions that may come up.
Are there any questions?
When we enter into this agreement, I mean, do we have the same contractor service all of our locations, or is it just the courthouse? I guess what I'm getting at is, do we have separate service agreements for each location? And is that efficient if we do?
We have 2 contracts, one for the courthouse and one for this building. And currently they're with separate entities. So for example, this building is serviced by Blau Brothers. And so a lot of that was linked just to the timing of the contracts and also the timing when this building received an HVAC update about 2 or 3 or 4 years ago.
So would it not be financially better if we had only to deal with one contractor to service all our locations?
That would remain to be seen. Again, some of this is linked to the timing. We'd have to go back to see when this contract is coming due. If this goes forward, this contract would be on a 2-year term with the option for 2-year extensions. So we'd have to go back to our current contract for this building and see about aligning that. As far as whether it'd be more efficient and effective fiscally, that would remain to be seen based on the proposals that were received and the negotiated contract that was worked out.
Supervisor McDaniel, the thing with this building, Blau Brothers won this contract, and they had a maintenance contract associated with that. So it's extended maintenance with that. So they're servicing their own installation. The courthouse contract, again, it was a timing thing, as Mr. Bolsters stated. It went out separately because it wasn't aligned with the same thing. 2 different buildings, 2 different types of HVAC. They weren't built at the same time. This one was replaced 4 years ago. I hope that helps.
It does. It just seems like it'd be better just to deal with one contractor instead of multiple, but so be it.
Yes, we like consolidation wherever we can. In this case, it just wasn't available.
Any other questions? Okay, can we have a motion to accept the rankings and direct the county administrator to return to the board with a contract for consideration?
So moved.
We have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Day,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you all. Board salary briefing, Ms. Huffman.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, at a meeting several months ago, I believe, Susan Wood had spoken with the board about some issues she had with the way board salary was established. And so it was requested that during our usual time between May 1st and June 30th, that the board would be briefed on how on the authority for board compensation and on the options that are available and the history in establishing the board salary. So under the statutes, copies are on your agenda. You have 2 options. And the first is the traditional option, was the only option for many years. And that was to allow the board to establish salaries at the maximum permitted under that statute. You could go less, you could not go over, and then permitted the chairman and the vice chair to receive certain additional amounts, $1,800 per year for the chairman, $1,200 per year for the vice chairman. And then the annual salary was established each year between May 1st and June 30th. Until May 2019, board salaries were set at $5,500 per year, with no increase in compensation since January 1st, 1996. In addition, the chairman received additional compensation of $1,800 per year, and the vice chair was receiving $23 per meeting. Then for option 2, I'm sorry, I had a little notice pop up here. I'm trying to, okay. Under option 2, the board is permitted to exceed the traditional maximums by setting the salaries prior to July 1 of any year in which at least 40% of the board members are running for office. And then the effective date of setting that salary is January 1st of the following year, which is when the new board members would take office. And it permits an additional amount to be set for the chairman and vice chairman. There's no inflation factor with this option, but the county may provide for reimbursement of expenses for purchasing, operating, maintaining a telephone, other expenses directly related to the performance of official duties. This option was available to the board in 2019, with 60% of the seats on the board being elected for terms beginning January 1, 2020. The compensation established in accordance with this section would remain in effect until change, so it would no longer require the annual setting of salaries. In other words, it's not necessary for you to do anything to continue what's currently in effect. In addition to the salary, the members may members of the board may receive the same fringe benefits that are given to county employees generally. In the past, as with county employees, the county has covered the cost of health insurance coverage for board members who elect to take that coverage. And I believe that goes back as far as current county records currently exist on the computer. I was unable to find any information prior to that time, but that's in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 years. On May 28th, the Board of Supervisors adopted an ordinance to continue its previously established salary without an increase, other than to reallocate, implement option 2 and reallocate the funds for the cost of insurance by the county to the salary, so that salary, the compensation for the board, was set at $12,280 per year beginning January 1st, and then an additional salary of $1,800 for the chairman and $600 for the vice chairman. The travel reimbursement for board members at $250 per month was approved to continue. And then the board chose to receive county health insurance, or continue to receive county health insurance coverage, but to pay the premiums individually out of that compensation that was established. A copy of the ordinance, I believe, was included in the agenda, and the basis for this adjustment was just reallocating the potential funding for the health insurance coverage to the board compensation. So if the board has any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them. As indicated, there's no action required unless you wish to make changes to the ordinance that's currently in effect, such as reversion to option 1 or some other reduction. You may not increase under the current under the current ordinance. You may not increase compensation this year.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Huffman? Are there any requests for any action? Okay.
I'm sorry, can
Go
I
ahead.
just ask one question? So if I understand this correctly, is that the increase or not, is that the actual salary of 5,500 wasn't increased, but the insurance benefit was extended to all and the cash value of that. Is that correct? Is that?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Huffman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Suter, can we talk, set a public hearing on the meals tax increase?
Yes, during budget discussions as a result of the COVID-19 impacts, the board asked staff to research the meals tax. The meals tax in the county is currently 4%. New legislation effective July 1st allows counties to impose a meal tax at a rate up to 6%. The meals tax rate in the cities of Lexington and Buena Vista are each 6% now. The advertised 2021 budget includes a 2% increase from 4% to 6%. Under normal conditions, a 2% increase in the meals tax would generate an estimated $760,000 annually. However, we've reduced that estimate to $532,000, and it's a 30% reduction over what may have been or would have been projected based on COVID-19 impacts to the local economy. Per state law, a change in the meals tax requires adoption of an ordinance, which does, of course, require a public hearing. And Ms. Huffman has drafted the required ordinance, which is included in your agenda package. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have. If in agreement, the action would be to schedule the public hearing for this matter for May 26th.
Any questions for Mr. Suter?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment. As any tax increase is difficult, I think this one, the benefit to this is that while we're asking our local citizens to chip in, we're also going to receive the majority of the benefit from the folks who are visiting here, many of whom would come to the thing. So while I'm not happy about considering this, I think we, in an area where we have lots of people come and have attractions, we need to examine those sources of revenue. So I'd make a motion, we set the public hearing for May 26th to examine this.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Aye.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, has everyone had time to look at the monthly staff report?
I move we approve as submitted and with.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. All right. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, that concludes, I believe, all our topics for tonight. I would be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Second.
before we vote on that, can I just ask one thing?
Sure.
Perhaps at our next meeting on May 26th, if the county administrator or whoever he advises to do so could bring back some information to us on how we intend to reopen.
Sure. Mr. Suter, did you hear that?
I did, and I could just very briefly, that's been something that we've been discussing for the past week or so. And the idea would be to reopen in the safest way possible for everyone. And I am talking with other localities to try to figure out some best practices and share ideas, which is, we've leaned on each other a lot through this whole thing. So we'll continue to do that. and I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah, so if we could just make that an agenda item for a report from staff, that would be great.
Also, Mr. McDaniel, thank you for bringing that up because our Economic Development Committee has also been looking at that and discussing with our federal contacts as well as state, how we can do so safely, but do so as soon as possible.
Okay, so we had a motion to adjourn from Mr. Lewis. Did we have a second?
We did. Ms. Ayers.
Okay. We'll vote. Mr. Lewis,
Aye.
Ms. Ayers,
Yes?
Mr. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mr. Day,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Thank you for all your hard work, and I guess I'll see you in another meeting in a few minutes.